Welcome to the Duck Dive. Today, we're getting into something really quite unique. It's about figuring out what success actually means, but like on your own terms. We're diving into this really personal story from an article called The Authentic Path, A Life Reclaimed. And it's not just, about changing jobs. It's way bigger than that. It's about stepping away from what society expects. A real reclaiming of self.
Yeah, what's really fascinating, I think, is how this piece just lays it all out there.
Yeah.
This person's decision, I mean, to walk away from a future that looked incredibly secure on paper, the kind of path most people would probably jump at. So our mission here really is to pull out the main ideas, how someone navigated some pretty significant personal disadvantages to build a life he sees as a win, even with all the uncertainty.
Okay, right. Let's try and unpack that a bit. So imagine this. You've graduated from the University of Michigan, physics degree, and you're right there about to start a stable lab tech job. Sounds good, right? Like
Yeah.
a dream for many. But then, literally weeks before you start, you just turn it down. What on earth makes someone do that? Such a massive pivot.
But that's the core question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because his whole reasoning, it seems, is just deeply tied into this feeling he'd apparently carried his whole life, like of being disadvantaged. The sources mention things like, being shorter than average, maybe not fitting the mold of conventional attractiveness, some social awkwardness maybe tied to a difficult home life,
Yeah.
years of feeling, I guess, overlooked or dismissed. And it led him to this pretty stark realization, like, okay, the standard script. Work hard, get married, have kids. Maybe that's just not designed for someone starting, so far behind the curve.
Yeah.
So faced with living a life where he felt like, well, a nobody by those standards, he made this really radical choice instead.
Wow, that's a powerful place to get to. Well, it sounds a bit desperate in a way. So, okay, he makes this huge decision, steps away from the safe bet. What then? What did that actually look like on the ground? What was the immediate next move?
Well, the article suggests he didn't exactly have some grand master plan ready to go. He actually moved back into like a basic college apartment, started trying to piece together freelance work. But maybe more importantly, he started building a YouTube channel. And, not for fame or fortune initially. It seemed more like an outlet, a way to maybe connect with others who felt similar things. What's really interesting is how he started to take his shadow, his anger, past stuff, feeling rejected, and kind of integrate it, turn it into something constructive.
So channeling it instead of letting it just eat him up.
Exactly. He was like using the energy from those past rejections, those frustrations, to actually fuel what he was doing now.
That's quite a turnaround. Can you give an example? Like, how did that actually show up in his work, the freelance stuff or the early channel?
Yeah, absolutely. The article points out that he found a kind of edge in his freelance work because of that unique perspective, shaped by those disadvantages. He wasn't just phoning it in. Apparently, he was super meticulous. It describes him building this detailed content calendar, an audience engagement strategy.
Yeah.
Almost like he had something to prove, right?
Yeah.
To himself, maybe.
Yeah.
And to the world that kind of overlooked him before.
Right.
So it wasn't just random videos. It was disciplined, almost strategic, using these really personal experiences.
Yeah.
He became incredibly dedicated. Every rejection wasn't a failure. It was just more data for the next attempt.
That's a really different way of looking at it. And I bet those early days, they must have been tough financially, emotionally. That scrappy living the article mentioned.
Oh, yeah. The sources are pretty clear. It was really difficult, extremely hard. He talks about periods of real financial instability, barely making ends meet, paycheck to, meager paycheck. But he seemed to view it as necessary, part of taking ownership. He pushed through because he had this almost defiant belief in his choice. He got that the world wasn't just going to hand him a life that fit. And his gamble, as the article puts it, was exactly that, betting everything on himself. That takes enormous internal strength, right, to not just give in to doubt when nobody's cheering you on.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned his gamble slowly began to pay off, growing subscribers, even viral moments. Can you sort of walk us through that? How did the channel actually start getting traction, and what about those viral moments? What effect did they have?
Right. So it wasn't like an overnight explosion or anything. It was gradual.
Yeah.
He was just consistently putting out content that seemed to hit home with people who also felt a bit outside the norm or disenfranchised. The channel grew because I think his authenticity came through. The article even talks about a specific cross-country move he made, like a deliberate choice to live somewhere that fit his independent vibe better, moving further away from convention.
Interesting.
And that move fed back into his content, giving him new stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Now, the viral moments, yeah, they were a bit of a mixed blessing, it sounds like. Sure, they brought in tons of new viewers, some validation maybe. But they also really hammered home how unpredictable online attention is.
Ah, okay.
He learned pretty quick that, going viral is temporary. Building a real connection with a steady audience, that's way more valuable long term. It kind of pushed him back towards sustainable content, not just chasing the next big hit.
That makes sense. It's fascinating, actually, how those moments of external success didn't pull him off course, but sort of reinforced his commitment to being authentic. So given that, and the constant financial wobbles you mentioned, how does he square that, this like precarious existence? How does he see that as a profound victory?
And that's really the absolute core of it, isn't it? The authentic path. He
Hmm.
flat out says he chose death before dishonor.
Mhm.
For him, trying to live that conventional life, trying to squeeze into a box that just diminished him.
Yeah.
That would have been a kind of slow death of
Yeah.
his spirit. So his win isn't about the job title or the house or the 2.5 kids. It's measured by being self-directed, by building something that's genuinely his, even if it means walking a financial tightrope all the time. He sees the instability not as failure, but as part of the deal, a chosen trade-off for autonomy. It's completely redefining success based on internal values,
Hmm.
authenticity, self-ownership.
That is incredibly powerful. Choosing authenticity over comfort, it really makes you rethink the standard definitions, doesn't it? And he encourages others, especially those feeling like underdogs, to bet on themselves. So what's the flip side? What are the hidden costs, in his view, of not doing that, of not betting on yourself, even if no one else gets it?
Yeah, if you zoom out a bit, the big takeaway from this deep dive, I think, is that message, turning what you perceive as disadvantages into actual fuel. His choice to take his shadow, all the anger, the trauma, feeling rejected, and build something with it. That's a huge lesson in owning your story. In authenticity, he seems to believe the hidden cost of not betting on yourself, especially if you feel marginalized. It's this slow, quiet chipping away at your spirit.
Mm.
Living someone else's life, maybe. Always looking for approval from the outside that might never come. And just, dying a bit inside each day. For him, that alternative, way worse than any financial insecurity.
So really think about this. What does this mean for you? This whole deep dive, it kind of forces us to look again at how we define success, right? I mean, here's a guy, constant financial instability, life described as barely sustainable. Yet he sees it all as a massive win. Because it's his, it's authentic, that phrase, death before dishonor, choosing that over a life that would have crushed him slowly.
Which leads right into a really important question for you to maybe chew on. In a world that's constantly measuring us by these external things, job security, marriage, family, all that, what does it genuinely mean to win in your life? And maybe just as importantly, what are the hidden costs, the things you lose by not betting on yourself? Especially when maybe nobody else sees your potential, just like the author felt.
And what really hits home for me is this. Even now, with the channel's future kind of up in the air because ad revenue is so volatile, maybe depending on community support, memberships, Patreon, that kind of thing, he still feels like he's already won. The victory wasn't about reaching some stable endpoint. It was the choice. Choosing authenticity over comfort. Building a life that's truly his own. So that leaves us with a pretty powerful thought to end on. Considering his perspective, what conventional ideas about success might you need to challenge or maybe even redefine on your own path?